Thank you everyone for joining us today. I am gonna pause as we welcome all of our participants in today. Thank you for joining us for our next edition of our 49er Industry Chats. My name is Noemi Guevara. I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement, and we thank you for joining us today. Now, I would like to remind you that session is being recorded and it will live on our website at csulb.edu/alumni. Also, I would like to encourage you throughout our chat today to use our Q&A box located above or below your screen to submit any questions for our guest speaker today. And now it's my honor to introduce Nolan Knight with his chat today titled Los Angeles Noir Fiction. Nolan Knight is a fourth generation Angeleno whose short fiction has been featured in various publications, including Akashic Books, Thuglit, Crimespree Magazine, Shotgun Honey, Tough and Needle. He earned his Bachelor's of Arts from CSULB in English Creative Writing. He is a former staff writer for Los Angeles' biggest music publication, the LA Record, and currently resides in Long Beach. The Neon Lights Are Veins is his debut novel. Please join me in welcoming today's industry chat host, Nolan Knight. Welcome, Nolan, to our 49er Industry Chats.
Thanks so much. Thanks for inviting me.
We're very excited to get to know you a little bit better, hear about your time at Long Beach, your process to get here, and then your experience now as a writer, and then talk about hopefully your latest novel and future projects.
Okay, great.
So I think I'd really like to, I know we were talking before we went live a little bit about your journey to get to college and your experience in Cal State Long Beach.
Yeah, it was a great experience. Once I got into my major, I took a lot of classes with Professor Tyler Diltz, who's still there, great writer. And then when I graduated, I was able to snag a quick side gig working with the LA Record. I did all of their film stuff. I did film reviews for revival houses and interviews and these types of things, I guess, journalistic stuff. But the whole time I knew that fiction publication was the only thing I wanted to do. So the entire time I was writing and submitting, and received my first publication in 2008 with Thuglit. And then they kind of just snowballed from there of getting a couple things in a year, different crime fiction journals, literary journals, which a lot of them aren't around anymore. There are some really good ones still around, but I think the opportunities might have been a little bit more back then. Once I started getting the publications, it's when I started getting agent interest, and then writing books for an agent, books that didn't sell, and then selling my first book, this one that just came back out in 2015. The book that just came out, The Neon Lights Are Veins, was written 2010 to 2013. So I guess to put it in perspective, that was a 3-year window. I sold the book in 2015. It was originally released in 2017, and then it went out of print, and then signed a new 3-book deal with Down and Out Books last year, and now it just came back out this week. So, you're talking 12 years for one book right now.
Wow, it is definitely a process. And I know we wanted to start a little bit about you explaining for us that don't know what Los Angeles Noir Fiction is a little bit.
Yeah. Well, noir fiction is just a subcategory of the crime fiction canon. Los Angeles Noir is basically my favorite type of stuff to not only read but to write. When it comes to the topic of noir, I made a little graph here, if you'll just bear with me. Like this technology, it's called a whiteboard. So this blue line, if this represents happiness. Most commercial books tend to do this. Start here. Oh no. They'll start here and they'll go this way. Every noir book that's ever been written goes like this, and it could start anywhere. But I guess the main gist of noir is that the protagonist is screwed. They're not going to have a good ending. It's going to be a long day, long book. There could be hope in the book, but it's usually for other people that aren't the main characters, right?
Right.
It's
kind of like real life sometimes.
It draws a lot on. Maybe that's what drew me to it a little more, but yeah, it's a downhill trajectory from the get-go.
Okay, wonderful. And I guess what drew you to that genre of writing?
Well, there's a bunch of books, right? One of them, the first one I read for class at Long Beach State, and I have it right here. Most everyone's probably read this, but this one really knocked me out. Was The Day of the Locust, right, by Nathaniel West. And just the atmosphere of Los Angeles is mainly my main interest. So to see something that came out in 1939 and have an outsider come into Los Angeles, see a bunch of Hollywood ne'er-do-wells, and then ultimately end in an apocalyptic ending, right? Like, it really struck a chord with just everything that I've read after it, and that's not a groundbreaking revelation with Day of the Locust, but it was influenced by this book, Myron Bernig's The Flutter of an Eyelid, which came out in 1933. So if you're a geek like me that likes Day of the Locust, it's the same plot line. It heavily influenced him, and it just was re-released, I think, a couple years ago. But those two are like my first mainstay noir. I guess that wasn't even a noir novel. Those are literary books, right? Because the noir genre came a little after that. But reading that just kind of set me on the path of finding more books in that direction, and that's how I landed in noir fiction, basically.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So what is your creative process? We talk about that inspiring you. Like, what is your creative process now?
Well, I guess the creative process really is just being proactive, writing as much as I can when I'm not working on a novel, to be proactive in creating more short stories, creating screenplays, just keeping the brain fresh, reading constantly. Reading has helped me more than anything. I had a teacher, I can't remember his name, at Long Beach State, who once said, the best part about English writing is that there are no rules, right? You could write a single novel with one period at the end if you really wanted to try and do it, But what always stuck with me was that in order to break the rules, you have to know the rules. So the more you read, the more it's just instinct on knowing when something's not working, knowing when something's not right, finding out your ticks on what you're not doing well, or little oversights. I tend to, I found this oversight the other day where I tend to use the word towards instead of toward, and I have to go back and catch myself with it. Like just little knick-knack things that you don't normally think about, but they tend to pop up when you go into editing, and so in order to have your work as polished as possible before submitting it, having the wherewithal to go through these problems and fix them is a major benefit.
Wonderful. I am getting questions in our chat box here, but someone's asking, what is your favorite noir author?
Well, let's see. I have a whole stack I keep looking over here. I have a whole stack of books. If you want, I can go through them.
Sure.
And tell you. So after Day of the Locust, what I tended to gravitate toward was this book by Chester Himes, If He Hollers, Let Him Go. It's a groundbreaking novel on just social and racial discord in 1940s Los Angeles. It tackles a broader spectrum of basically the harsh truths of African American lives in the 1940s, but it put in my brain that noir can be used as a catalyst to bigger conversations in novels, right? So this is definitely one that had like a major impact. This one, Dorothy B. Parker, In a Lonely Place. You probably recognize the title. They made a movie about it with Humphrey Bogart and Gloria Graham. But this is a female perspective written noir from 1947. And what it did was it's about a serial killer. I don't really read much serial killer books, but it introduced me into works of people like Patricia Highsmith, and even nowadays of girls like Megan Abbott, who are just incredible. But it's a different perspective than I had read before. From like most noir canon comes from the male perspective in the 1940s and 50s. Well, here's a Patricia Highsmith, The Talented Mr. Ripley, incredible book, pretty good movie. This was a major one for Los Angeles. All these books I'm going to be talking about they're all set in Los Angeles. That's my criteria basically for my favorite books. This one was a heavy hitter for me when I read it. Jim Thompson, one of the best to ever do it when it comes to noir fiction. But this book in particular, it highlighted structure for me. There's three main characters in this, who the chapters volley on top of each other to a climax. And it just opened my brain about how to present how to present the story to the reader. You know, it was just a completely new concept that I had read at the time. And I probably read this 20 years ago, but it sticks with me. I mean, it's Jim. You read all of Jim Thompson's book. He's incredible. But when it comes to the author that had the most impact on me when I was younger, it goes back to James Ellroy, who wrote the LA Quartet. This is the first book, The Black Dahlia. The other three are The Big Nowhere, LA Confidential, and White Jazz. They're written from, let me see here what I have, from 87 to 92. So it's a very short window to write this canon of books, which are now, a lot of the language, I'm sure, could be off-putting to people. There's a lot of racial invective and just things that, the current climate, I don't know how you'd sell a book like this now, but what's most impressive is that in this four-year span, basically, or 5-year span, within all these books, you're watching an author evolve in real time. You're watching his style go from point A to point Z, basically. And at the end, the fourth book, it's so truncated. They call it a staccato style, very quick and minimal, that if I were to use an analogy for it, it's like reading these 4 books is like book number 1 is like big band music, and book number 4 is free jazz. So you're seeing the evolution of this guy's prose, and it's an evolution that you see in your own prose when you write long enough. You just have to be open to it. You have to let your instincts drive you there. And that's what was so heavy hitting with those books to me, was that could come out of someone's brain like that. And it really made me question, what does my brain look like on the page if I just let it out, So James Ellroy is definitely one of the major influences I had coming up. Other influence is like outlaw noir fiction, which is fiction that's written by basically felons. And there's 2 big hitters. One is Eddie Bunker, No Beast So Fierce. Edward Bunker, you probably know him better as Mr. Blue from Reservoir Dogs. Let me see if you can see his picture here. Right?
Right.
Incarcerated in juvenile hall in prison most of his life, but put out some of the best noir crime fiction novels that I can, because it's his own perspective. It's a perspective that I don't know of because I haven't been incarcerated my entire life, but it's a new perspective on an old form. By this point, this came out in 1973, and it led to books like this, which was a major heavy hitter for me, was Another Day in Paradise by Eddie Little. Eddie Little was a little known writer. He only put out 2 books. He put out this book, he put out Steel Toes, and then he died prematurely. Lifelong prison guy, drug abuse and rehabilitation guy, but very, very honest, like a very heart-wrenching, and just there's nothing held back in these books. Their first-person perspective too, which helps people get into the character, but it's just, they're 2 of the bravest novels I've read in any crime, across any crime fiction canon. They're out of print now, which is, you know, a crime in itself, but they're definitely worth checking out. The last time I saw them, they had both of them at the Iliad in up in the Valley, which is a great bookstore to go get used books and stuff. But when it comes to like modern noir, this is my last book. This author basically shows me what the noir canon is possible of without technically being called noir. It's Richard Lang's Dead Boys. This is a short story collection from 2007. What he does is he uses the common tools of noir and of crime fiction, but they're simply almost like backdrops to character stories that enrich these characters to a point where they're about everyday people, they're about your neighbor, they're about me, things like that. But you know, a crime could be happening in the neighborhood, or someone could be contemplating an opportunity for one. It's never the catalyst of the story. It's really just to add richness to the everyday lives of human beings. And his books that he's gone on to publish after that, they're all great. His last one just came out last summer, Rovers, and he was kind enough to write a blog for Neon Lights or Veins. But those books right there that I just showed are the foundation of everything that I had read up to the point before I really went full throttle in writing the Neon Lights or Veins. So that's kind of it's my foundation. I mean, out of all of them, they're just, you can't go wrong with any of them.
Wonderful. And I mean, I've chatted with other writers before, and they usually say or share with our students and our alumni, like, write about what you know. But in this genre, like you just said, like, you don't know what it is to be in drugs or go to jail. So how do you go about doing your research for your characters in this genre?
Well, when it comes to my work, I don't really write about cops or lawyers or anything like that. My main protagonist, like in Neon Lights, is just an old age skateboarder down on his luck whose girlfriend goes missing. And I mean, skateboarding was a major part of my life for my younger years. I got the scars to prove it. And that was just something I knew. I knew about that world. I knew about guys like him. I grew up with guys like him. And I lived in the neighborhood that I set it in. So it was basically taking everything around me and doing something with it at that point. So the book's set in 2008, and I was living up in LA from that period of time. And so the snapshot in the book is basically a snapshot of what that was like now. It's virtually unrecognizable now. A lot of the descriptions in there have been torn down, or places don't exist, but I drew a lot from that, of just my neighborhood, my past experience, and just like my neighbors, you know,
right.
Going down to the bar and hanging with your friends, and then having an ear for conversations going on and the characters you meet. And in Los Angeles, it's endless, you know, the characters are endless. It's just knowing which ones are interesting to explore more.
Definitely. Great. Thank you for sharing that. And I know you started off with, sharing about that you were close to one of your faculty members. Can you kind of elaborate like how important that is? Because I think sometimes our students don't do that or are afraid or intimidated to reach out to their faculty members and talk about maybe that impact it did on you and your future.
Yeah. Well, I had a lot of classes with Professor Diltz because at the time, I'm not sure how many creative writing teachers there were. So I must have had at least 2 or 3 classes with him. And then years down the road, I was invited to do a reading at Noir at the Bar in Los Angeles. And I had only published short fiction at the time, and I was the first reader, but I didn't know who the main reader was going to be, and it was him. So then we became acquainted again because I hadn't seen him in 5 years, and so now our paths cross online virtually, most of the time. But whenever I put out some news about like the book deal and stuff, he's right there like cheering me on, and um, I think that's almost a unique situation. I can't remember most of my other teachers' names. Um, I remember one of them though I reached out to when I first graduated, or right before I was going to graduate, and I was like, "Hey, do you think it's a good idea if I go to this convention or some kind of writers group thing?" And the only response back I got was, uh, "Sometimes you have to go out and swim with the other fish." And so whenever an opportunity comes up to go to reading, go to a convention, things like that, I always think about that because going to things have open doors from just meeting friends and meeting like-minded people that have your own interests, when it comes to the fiction you're writing.
Right. Definitely. Kind of wanted to go back to sorry, I have some questions here. How did you get interested in writing? Was it an interest you had when you were smaller, and did your parents influence you into writing?
Yeah, well, when I was younger, I spent a lot of time watching movies, uh, an unhealthy amount of time watching movies, and so story was always just burned into my brain. And then my mom was really good at getting me into um, English courses that were pretty advanced. My 8th grade teacher, Mr. Wiberly, who just passed a couple of years ago, taught me more about the English language than I probably. I mean, we were diagramming pages, when I was in 8th grade, and things like that. Just English came easy. Mathematics, I can't. I'm terrible at mathematics, and I don't even try. It's but English, it just always made sense to me, and I always knew I wanted to write. I just didn't know what I wanted to write. So it would be, do I want to do screenplay? And I like tried that out, and it was okay. It was just once I started writing prose seriously when I was probably 18 or 19, that's when I realized that like this is what I'm gravitating toward, and I'm gonna go all in with this.
Wonderful. And I know prior to us going live, we were talking about that you do have a day job and writing is, your passion. I guess, can you share with us, that drive to really pursue your dream, that you're making this hopefully your full-time job one day, and
Yeah.
what is that hustle like?
Well, when I was in college, I was working overnights at UPS loading trucks, and then it allowed me time to do my work, study, and then also to write. And so right out of the gate, when I graduated, I knew that whatever job I'm gonna get, there were a couple of things I wanted. One was like the ability to like give me time to write, and the other one was to keep my grammar sharp. So I was always looking at report writing jobs, things like that, and I ended up stumbling in to grammar, so that when I'm writing creatively, I can focus all my imagination in one area, you know. And I don't write every day. I write whenever I feel like it, but it turns out to be most every day, you know.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was very important for me not to have a job that provided me comfortability and security, and but also allowed for me to not waver in what I really wanted to do with my life. And you know, I have a wife and 2 kids now. It's there's a lot more responsibility on my shoulders, but my writing habits and have been the same for, you know, 15 years now, to where the writing will get done. It's just facilitating an environment to allow it to get done.
Mhm. Wonderful. So like now you're a published author. Can you share with us like what is that process like? Like is it years in the making, and then how do you go even about being able to do that?
Well, it is a tedious process. Um, my book publication basically came about a lot because I had short story publications that took years. You know, my first one was in 2008, and then I've maybe had 2 or 3 published a year going up through, I don't know, 2013, 14, something like that. They just kind of accumulate, and then you start having similar editors, or because there's a smaller window of crime fiction outlets, really. I published in one of them a couple times and another one a couple times, and then you start kind of, you're getting your name out there. So when you are submitting for queries for agents or things like that, that there's something to put on the query. But it's kind of a cumulative experience. You know, I sold this book in 2015 to a defunct publisher now. They were called 280 Steps, but one of the reasons they picked it up was because of the track history of the stories that I had. I'm not so sure about Down and Out. I think it could have been word of mouth, or it could have just been the content of all, because I provided them with 3 books. That book, a short story compilation that comes out on the 26th of September, called Beneath the Black Palms, and then a new book that comes out later next year, that I haven't got a date on yet. But it's the constant writing is what's providing me the ability to keep publishing, because every writer is going to have some sort of a backlog, and I don't really have a backlog. I just have stuff that I've written since stuff that I've sold. So, you know, I have a book right now that's being shopped, that's being queried, that I finished during the lockdown. You know, like it's a very arduous thing to keep plodding forward, but when you have no other choice, like it's almost an obsession to just keep writing. You don't even really think about it. You're on to the next. You know, I'm researching a new book right now, but in the meantime, with these books release, I'm just writing short stories to keep my chops going, and then I'm researching the new book. So you're constantly moving forward. You know, rejection is part of the game. It's just moving forward. You know, and it's a subjective business. It's, you know, one person might hate it, one person might love it. You never know. It's just doing the work, making sure it's good, sending it out, moving, and then going on to the next thing.
Yeah. So do you alternate between short stories and novels? Like, are you writing 2 different pieces at the same time at any time, or do you like finish one before you start another one?
I try not to like double dip. If I'm writing a novel, I'm engaged for like 18 months, you know, where it's just, you're in a fog of one thing and one thing only, and every day is just one step closer to getting to where you're going. And it's incredible. You know, it's my favorite thing to do. But when that's done, and then you're in edits and you're in other things, I still got to keep doing things to keep my writing up to my own standards. And so it could be dabble in screenplay. It could go back to short stories. It's just anything to keep the outlet going. I guess I've never really had a period where I've had time off in the past, well, since I graduated, really.
Mhm.
But I don't look at it as work, I look at it as my pleasure. So it's just keeping myself busy so that when I start a new novel, that I'm like going into it the best I could possibly go into it, as engaged as I can go into it. At least convincing myself that that I am,
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any words of wisdom? Someone's asking for inspiring writers who are feeling discouraged due to rejections or just, how difficult this process can be.
Yeah. I mean, rejection is gonna happen, and it's gonna happen a lot. I mean, I get to the point now where I'll have something rejected that I submitted 2 years ago and I don't even remember what it was,
Right.
But it's completely blowing that off. You have to have a strong belief in like what you're doing, and that you're closer to getting to where you want to go, because you have if you're in college right now and you're writing short stories, that's a small pool to draw from on, the status of your progression as a writer. It's only until you get 5, 10 farther in that you'll notice, you'll look back on some of this stuff and go, I don't want anyone to ever read this. Should I burn this file cabinet or whatnot? But it's really, if it's an obsession and you have to do it and you're getting better and better at doing it, you just have to keep going. It's not a question about who's rejecting you. It's a question of not rejecting yourself.
That's true. That's very true.
And another important thing is is just find the community, find your community. If you're writing romantic novels, there's a community for that. And there's a lot of like-minded people that like the exact same things that you like, and they're also trying to write in a manner similar, and you kind of you can feed off each other's experience, and then all of a sudden realize, hey, we're all in the soup,
Mhm.
It's but we're all also swimming, and we're moving forward, and it's a battle of attrition.
Definitely. That kind of leads into my next question. Like, how do you keep abreast of just like, I don't know if I call it writing techniques or like best practices for this industry? And there might be, like you just said, groups or professional development groups.
Well, it's just peers, really.
Okay.
Right? But there are peers that like similar styles of writing that you like. That was my point. But I don't know. It's hard when it comes to publishing being such a long-winded experience, you can't really focus on trends or what's selling right now, because the reality is that book was written 2 years ago and they didn't know that it would be selling now most of the time. And so you just have to write something that you want to read, because ultimately you're the audience as well, right? That's what brought you to the interest of wanting to be a writer. So it's I'm trying to think here. I lost my way of thought. What was the question again?
Like, how do you keep abreast of trends, or like you said, peers or
yeah,
groups?
well, once you get peers, you always follow new books that are coming out. You can read the trades, Publishers Weekly, things of that nature. The majority of the stuff I read, it's all older stuff, because I'm just fascinated by those times, but modern books come out, and I read like my friends' books, anything that comes across, even nonfiction, anything that comes across that strikes my fancy, I will read it just to read, you know, comic books, anything. Like it's just feeding the brain, and then looking at, you know, just looking at how other people are getting across to you through reading. That's the main, I guess, technique I could imagine of keeping with the times, or you know, I'm not even sure how to answer that question really. I'm stuck in my own little bubble here, you know.
Your unique world. I do have a question, like, are there specific genres that you gravitate to read, in specific?
Yeah, you know, I try not to even look at genre,
Yeah.
because that's a publishing tool, right? Noir books are what the publisher puts to get eyeballs on it, but really a good story is a good story. And majority of the books I read, they're not crime fiction. They're literary fiction, historical fiction. But I don't know. I gravitate more toward the story itself, and I'm kind of a snob when it comes to settings. I love reading stuff in cities. You know, majority of everything I read are just city based, and then I'll read stuff set in tropical settings or the South, or when I want to like go on vacation, kind of. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but that's because the city's my world. You know, and I'm fascinated by it, and I probably gravitate more towards stuff in big cities, specifically LA, than anything.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna add. Like, is it specifically LA or any big
Yeah,
city?
LA is just like I love it, man. I can't. I'm always learning new things about it. It's just my work revolves around it. I'm a fourth generation born here, so the stories I hear from like my grandparents are just it's never ending. Like you know, the Los Angeles in itself is an expansive place. You know, I've lived here my entire life. I'm still figuring out new streets on, you know, new back ways to get places I'm going, or um, it's I'm just immersed in Los Angeles.
Wonderful. So I do have a question here. Where does Chandler figure in your influencers?
Oh well, Chandler, you know, those are the books that I read right from the get-go. Chandler, Hammett. I remember Hard Case Crime was coming out at the time, and so I subscribed to them monthly, and I get a new book every month. And it'd be like Donald Westlake and Charles Willeford, or David Goodis, the Black Lizard catalog that Barry Gifford put out. These are major influences, but they're not, I guess, they're not the subgenre I was talking about today, but I've read most of them. You know, like Chandler's incredible. His descriptions of Los Angeles are spot on. And then there's a book actually it's like Chandler's Los Angeles, where someone did research on all that, and that's great. They're essential reading. You know, for the crime fiction fan, the genre, you got to know what came before in order to build off of what's coming next. And of course, the time's completely different than it is now, but that's a feather in your cap. You know, you're living in a unique time with a unique brain, doing unique experiences that are also being experienced by other people your age that can come across through the written word.
Wonderful. So I know the Neon Lights is on re-release. Could you talk about, that process and that experience to, get this book out there and what you're doing around it right now?
Yeah, everything that I've been with Down and Out Books, my publisher, has been great. My first experience with indie publishing was a nightmare, and I was kind of trying to not go that route until I've met these guys, and it's the most pleasant experience I've ever had when it comes to editorial and book design, and a lot of things that a lot of the bigger publishers, they don't even include you on, it's just nice to have it back out after spending so much time on it. And so far, like with it being a re-release, there's not too much as far as book touring right now, because I did that on the first go, and it's more of a celebration. So like Saturday, we're doing a meet and greet book release at 10 Mile Brewery over in Signal Hill. You can pre-purchase a signed copy through like a bio on my Instagram, and just pick it up there and like have a beer, have some pizza, just hang out. And then and then in the spring and the fall, when the short story collection comes out, it's a new book. That's when I'll be doing more of a in-store book stuff. But there'll probably be a couple of things popping up here and there. I know I'm doing a group reading with Made in LA, which is an anthology series that is really good out of LA, on June 18th at Stories in Echo Park. They publish once a year, and it's a paperback, but it's open to anyone who wants to submit to it. And they're really good editors. They get really good talent pool going through them, and they're really passionate about what they do. I had a story in their second volume and a story in their third, and I think their fourth volume just came out. But they usually open up for submissions right around now. So, if you have a story and you believe in it, and it's set in California basically, or LA, I'd send it their way.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that. So I know we are up against time a little bit. So, but before we go, any insights, any words of wisdom you'd like to share with our students and our alumni that might be watching this here today or the recording later?
Well, there's one that I always think about, and it's regardless of genre, regardless of like what your favorite book is, like the golden era of American fiction was less than 100 years ago, right? So if you look at that on the map of world history, it's a snippet. It's a small fraction of the overall literary experience, right, in America. So that means that you're a lot closer to those writers than you think you are, as far as standards of living and topics you want to write about. I mean, that Chester Himes book I was talking about came out in was it like 60, I don't know, 45, I think. That novel, if you read it today, is more socially prescient than anything else you're going to read today, right? So your unique experience and your unique brain is right in that pool to be great. You're not far off. You're not as far off as you think you are. You just have to put in the time, read everything you can, and just become what you're planning on becoming. You have to live the dream to kind of attain it. You can't question your motive. You can only question your desire, I guess.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that. Before we go, I know I put your Instagram and your website on the chat if anyone wants to connect with you. I hope that's okay. If anyone wants to connect with you, you can reach out. Before we go, like, are your short stories and your novels available everywhere? Like,
some of the short stories are available through their original publications. If you go on my website, it'll list all the publications, and some of them are still in print, some of them aren't. Some are online only. But the short story collection, it's called Beneath the Black Palms. It comes out in September. Features all my published works along with a couple of new stories.
well, congratulations, Nolan, on you pursuing your dream of being a writer. Congratulations. We look forward to hearing more about your other upcoming projects very soon, and hopefully one day we could have you on campus. Again, thank you everyone for joining us for this industry chat. Please visit our website to learn about our future programs, or follow us on social media. And we thank you for your time.
Thank you.